regulation of probiotics. For the last 2 days, today and yesterday, we discussed all aspects of the probiotic, starting from what probiotics should be, where we can use, what is the validation, what proof we have, clinical trials, everything we talked in detail, the diseases where it is being used or where we are recommending as a prophylactic or as a therapeutics, detailed probiotics we have discussed. But the major issue, their regulation, control, their marketing, means what we are claiming, how much truthfulness is in that claim. So all this is the major issue. Maybe in India or maybe in abroad, that's why we are having two at least panelists who are having good exposure of out of the India, that what in what way probiotic is being regulated in other countries also. So we are having only 30 minutes for this panel discussion. So what we have decided that let each and every panelist speak for 3-4 minutes, and then you may ask few queries, few questions, and that we will like to respond. Not reply in the sense, respond. And what our panelists speak, if you have any queries in that, then you can also speak. So may I start from my left, from Dr. Batis? Dr. Batis, 3 minutes only.
Actually, regulation of probiotics is why is so important, because of the misuse of the probiotic products in the market. So I just did some pilot study. I mean data I collected that in India 90% of the probiotic products available in the market are spurious, and the labels, for which they make claim are not exactly, agreeing with the actual, in practice. So with this situation, I think there is a need, to introduce a stringent regulatory, setup, so that the quality should not be compromised, and the label particularly should give you the true picture of the story, That's all.
Thank you. Dr. Panik?
Well, I will give I fully agree with Dr. Batis, but I will give my gut feeling, or what I want. It is not really what exists, and how it will kind of harmonize when you are thinking about multiple countries. Number one, all countries, if possible, should be following kind of one standard. It doesn't have to be identical, but it should be, I know it is difficult, but it should be the fundamental, rules and regulations and understanding should be the same, because there we are talking about whether it is human beings or whether it is animals or aquaculture, they are all the same. So there cannot be multiple standards. That is one thing, somehow or other we have to get to that point. And the second thing, I always, this question of spurious or not present, even in the US, they will say at the time of packaging. So at the time of consumption, you don't know. But the companies themselves, I will defer this aspect to Dr. Sanders. She knows ins and outs of that. But to me, if it is being sold as a drug, if it is manufactured as a drug, if it is being used in the ICU, then it should follow a different set of stringent criteria in terms of manufacturing and clinical trials and all that. So it will cost more. We can't really do anything about it. Whereas if it is going to be used for regular supplement, OTC, over-the-counter type product without prescription, and you don't have to follow as much of stringent, yes, it will be GMP, but it will be food GMP, then it will be a different set of regulations, which is fine. But that regulation in India should be this should be same as what it is in the US, Canada, or European countries, is what I would like to happen.
I think the issue of regulations of these products has two separate components. One is the regulation of what you can say on the package, and the other is the regulation of quality. And I think with regard to the regulations of quality, it's a pretty simple issue. To me, the product has to be safe for the intended use, and whether that's a drug or a food or a supplement, it's got an identified target population, and if it's a drug, it's going to have a population that may be more vulnerable. But regardless, the product has to be safe for the intended use, and it has to be manufactured under high quality conditions. And the specifications really just need to meet the specifications that are necessary to assure a non-fraudulently labeled but safe product. So I don't think it's really all that complicated in theory. I think the difficulty is in getting assuring the compliance. The WHO FAO guidelines document that was written for foods back in 2002 just very clearly stipulated the basic requirements for product labeling, which is the genus, species, and strain. For every strain in the product has to be included. The viable count for each strain at the end of shelf life, so not at time of manufacture, so I fully agree with you there, has to be stipulated. And you know, so those are the basic labeling criteria for a probiotic product that would be unique compared to something, you know, some other type of product. But I don't think it's all that complicated from a quality point of view. It just has to be assured, and companies have to agree to execute. Now, the whole question of labeling for product benefits is a much more complicated situation, so I think we should just maybe limit comments to quality.
Actually, I would like to, you know, give you one particular example of BSL-3. BSL-3, you know, capsules. We did some study, you know, quite some time back, and just to check, you know, whether the intended application is really matching that or not, or even the labels, you know, are matching. So we found that out of, you know, several preparations, formulations, so very few really they turned out to be, you know, equivalent to what to the claims. But mostly, most of them, you know, the labels were not matching at all, you know. Sometimes we were not able to even isolate, you know, the lactobacillus, you know, from those culture, from those mixtures. So it's a very, very, very tricky, you know, issue, which I think needs to be sorted out. Otherwise, you know, it will never end.
Well, and I guess I would disagree. I don't think it's a tricky issue. I think that the methods exist to be able to clearly identify the proper taxonomy of the genus, species, and strain that's used as a probiotic in any product. At least scientifically, it's not a tricky issue. The only tricky part of it is the fact that so many products exist that don't correctly do that. And so the tricky issue is in getting the implementation, the compliance, as you said, up to speed, and there has to be some motivation for that to be the case.
So then can we just, I will wrap in 30 seconds. Then I think what we are really looking for is a third-party testing facility that is going to maintain compliance. It has to go through somebody else. And as we just heard, that it is not difficult to identify those taxonomic identification, and even quantitation is not that difficult. So before being released to the public, if a third party does the quality control and gets a stamp from them, and the approving agency, whether it is FDA or DCGI or anyone, they follow that, then it should be fairly simple.
Good afternoon. And I totally agree. I'm talking about probiotic foods. Probiotics, in fact, is a very nascent category in India. We heard the term probiotics in 2008. Until then, the term was not so, well known. And I think in the last 10 years, we've come a long way. And when it comes to regulations, of course, there were a lot of probiotic foods in the Indian market, and like Dr. Batish says, probably some of them were also spurious. But I think ICMR and DBT did an extremely valuable piece of job because they brought out guidelines for probiotic foods in 2011. So they had a task force, and probably referring to the 2002 FAO WHO guidelines, they brought out guidelines for probiotic foods. And now those guidelines have been taken a step forward by the Food Safety Standards Authority of India, where they brought out the nutraceutical regulations in 2017, and becomes implemented from 1st of January 2018. So in the nutraceutical regulations, probiotics and prebiotics are an important category. And they've clearly listed out